Morning, Bill here with the Metals Minute. Today is Monday, August 8th, 2022. We have all four of the metals higher again today, and they're higher than the last update on Wednesday as well. So this is a good move in the right direction. We have to keep in mind it's not going to be a straight line up. Some days it will feel like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but as long as it's more forward than back, we're in a trend, and the conditions today favor the metals versus, say, stocks, for example. Now, I think the stock market futures were up also, but what we have to be careful of is that the trend is different for stocks than it is metals. And what we see happening is more likely than not bear market rallies. When we see rallies in stocks, it's something we cannot expect to continue for very long. And when we see downturns in metals, we can't expect those to continue very long. So the trend right now favors metals over stocks. And often what happens in a bear market rally is stocks can rise as much as 20%. Before they fall 30 or 40%. And a little bit of stock market math here for us is anytime you lose 30%, it takes over 42% to break even from that. As a brief example, let's say we're starting with $100,000. and the markets go down 30%. So now you have $70,000. Well, if the markets rise 30% over the next year or two from there, that's not back to 100, because 30% of 70,000 is 21,000. 70 plus 21 is 91,000. In order to get back to 100, remember we lost 30% from our 100,000. In order to get back to that 100,000 value, we have to gain over 42% on the 70,000 to get back to 100. So oftentimes it takes a lot more time to gain 42% than it does to lose 30%. And adjusted for inflation, the market crash of 1929, it took right at 25 years before people had their value back. So be careful out there in the stocks, and whenever you see the metals go down in this environment, that's a great time to add, because the tendency is higher. Historically, 4 to 5 times higher over the next few years, given the financial conditions we find ourselves in today. In other news, they just passed a landmark, they call it the Inflation Reduction Act in Congress, and ironically it puts $750 billion of additional spending out into an economy that's already dealing with overripe inflation. Highest inflation numbers we've seen in 40-some years. And to that, they're going to be adding more spending. So we'll dive deeper into that as the week goes on, and we'll take a look at how what the implications are for precious metals owners and taxes and maybe some other things that will come out of this bill as it's digested. Ironically, or maybe not, that's not the best word, it's a little bit troubling that sometimes when people find out what's in these bills, that's at the same rate that the congressmen and women find out, and they've already signed it into law. So we'll see what comes of our deeper dive into that. Thank you for tuning in, and we have an important inflation number coming out later this week on Wednesday. It will give us a direction as to whether June was the peak or if we're still climbing. And keep in mind, even if the number is lower than it was in June, as long as it's positive, that means that inflation is still rising. So we'll keep an eye on that for you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.